Every 23rd spring for 23 days, it gets to eat.
Eat what?
Eat us.
Hello and welcome to Ycft. Today we are doing another ranking video, and today we are going to rank the Jeepers Creepers franchise. So, a little bit of housekeeping. We know about the crimes of the series creator Victor Salva. We are here purely to talk about the art, talk about the movies, because movies are made by more than one person. This is absolutely not us condoning what he has done, and the crimes will come into the conversation later on because they directly affected the later movie. So we just want to get that out of the way.
And in fourth place, probably unsurprisingly, is Jeepers Creepers Reborn from 2022. I think we said everything we really need to say in detail in our video on this when it came out. This movie is just shite. This movie is god awful. It really is a shame, because this is the movie that Creeper fans were expecting. This is the movie that we were holding out for. This is the movie that had the potential to revitalise a dead franchise. It's a different director, a Finnish guy called Timo Vuorensola. I think I'm pronouncing that. It feels like a fan film. Everything about it is just such poor and low quality. And I remember being aware as I was watching it in the cinema that this was probably the worst movie I'd ever seen, and I still feel like that. There is no impulse for me to ever rewatch this again. The acting was terrible. I think it was largely a British cast who were trying to do American accents. You can tell this was a very, very small budget, and you can tell, but I think one of the biggest crimes with the movie is Vuorensola, and probably the producers too. They were clearly making a movie, or they were envisioning a movie that was beyond the budget that they had. They weren't working realistically within the realms. It doesn't feel like it belongs in the Creeper franchise, to me personally, at all. I do feel for the guy that played the Creeper, Jiro Benjamin, who's another British actor. I feel like there are moments within the movie where you can tell he's studied Jonathan Breck, and I give him points for that. I do give the movie points for the opening, the prologue. I quite enjoyed that with Dee Wallace and the guy that plays her husband. Kind of a little homage to how the origins of the first movie came about, where a couple were driving in Florida, I think, and they actually saw Dennis Depew, who was a killer, dumping his wife's body. That was a story that played on, was it Unsolved Mysteries, I think, at the time, and what inspired Salva to tell the story of the first film. I quite like that. I quite like that nod. Unfortunately, the film just derails totally from there. It's just, it's too low budget. It doesn't feel like it belongs in the Creeper franchise. The acting is awful. The direction is awful. It is a COVID movie. And, you know, it's a casualty from that. I think it does suffer from that as well. It's just too disjointed. And I still think, I stand by it, it is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Not just the worst in the Creeper franchise, but just in general.
Well, what do I say to that? How do I follow up from that? It could have been really interesting, because we do see the Creeper waking up from his 23-year cycle. It reaches far beyond what its budget would allow. Terrible acting, a bad story that doesn't really go anywhere. We've got so many different plot threads that just don't really make sense. The visual effects in this movie are some of the worst I have ever seen. And it's embarrassing that this could be made, you know, in the 2020s.
Yeah.
Like, it is an actual embarrassment. Again, I felt bad sat in the screening with the Creeper, with the crew and cast and their families, wanting to get excited, but that was also a very quiet theatre.
Yeah.
At the end. We should have known when we saw that there was only going to be one screening of this. It's not very good. Bear in mind, within this world, this is a reboot, but the previous Creeper films exist in this world. So this Creeper is meant to be the Creeper that those films are based on, and that is offensive to Jonathan Breck and the Creeper that came before.
I totally forgot about that. You are right. They are films that exist in this universe, according to the fourth movie.
Didn't they make a movie out of it? Creepy Creeper or something?
3, actually. But none of that is real.
How do you like those peepers, bitch?
The lore that it introduces as well, like the whole baby connection. What are you doing, movie? Introducing new lore like that clearly should have been established from the first film.
Well, that's it. We're being a reboot. I don't mind it introducing new lore. It's you've got to make a good first movie, and this just didn't. So I think we're done talking about Jeepers Creepers Reborn. I actually had to rewatch a few scenes prior to this, and that I felt like I was losing brain cells. In third place is Jeepers Creepers 3 from 2017, written and directed by the franchise creator Victor Salva. So this is a film that realistically never would have came about naturally had Victor Salva's past crimes not been brought to light. He initially didn't want to do sequels to the first film. He on purpose wrote into the second one the 23 days every 23 years so that he would be made to do multiple sequels. His career clearly did not continue well after the allegations, the actual crimes that he went to jail for came to the public.
Yeah.
So he returned to Jeepers Creepers, his bread and butter, what he knew he could get a film out of. And the initial idea was going to be called Jeepers Creepers Cathedral. This film would have taken place 23 years after the events of the second movie, with Gina Phillips returning to take on the Creeper and avenge her brother. And this film came pretty close to shooting, didn't they? It was about 2015 it was.
They got close.
However, they were due to shoot in Canada, and there were some complications there, and basically he was banned from filming in Canada because of his past crimes.
Yeah, I think it was brought to the talent agency's awareness in Canada about Salva, because his crimes actually happened, many years before, decades before, but I think with the Me Too movement, it kind of
resurfaced.
It resurfaced, yeah. So he was a risk.
Unions basically saying anyone who worked on this film will be blacklisted. So he envisioned a smaller movie, which he hoped would drum up some hype and it would help springboard so he can make the movie that he actually wanted to make. So this is where Jeepers Creepers 3 comes from. Gina Phillips is relegated to a post-credit scene set 23 years later, and this movie takes place in between the events of Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2. And Jesus Christ, this movie, like Reborn, this one only had a single day release.
Yes.
Which was concerning. Jonathan Brecht just seems tired to me. There's a couple of standout scenes that are pretty interesting, but it introduces new lore that on purpose doesn't go anywhere because we're meant to get the answers in a later film, but actively contradicts what we see in the previous two films. We have a returning cast member who was aged, would have been 16 years, even though this is set the day after.
Yeah.
More god-awful VFX. Not quite as bad as Reborn, which is more embarrassing for Reborn, but this film, visual effects-wise, looks atrocious. There's far too much set during the day. The Creeper does not look good. The Creeper looks cheap. This whole movie just seems cheap and kind of nonsensical. There's 3 different plot points that never really intersect. There's no real main character of this movie. There's no reason for this movie to exist. The Creeper doesn't act like the Creeper that we've seen both before and after the events of this movie. I used to have a problem with the bright red shirt, but I recently realised upon rewatching the first one on Blu-ray, he is wearing a red shirt. It's just really dirty and tattered. It's not as vibrant as this one, so he clearly had a brand new shirt to change into. So I'm going to forgive the red shirt.
Yeah.
I got nothing more to say about this movie. What do you got?
Yeah, that hair dye that they gave that actor that plays the policeman in the first one, it really didn't do much to convey the fact that this film is supposedly taking place the same night as Jeepers Creepers 1. I actually can't get over it. It's basically like the backwards Cap saga with Jigsaw.
that worked splendidly.
Yeah, I agree. Look, this is not a good film. The director's personal life absolutely impacted it. You can tell. It does feel like a nonsensical narrative. Every time I watch it, I do feel the disjointedness between the 3 different threads more and more. And yeah, I think there is something to the fact that the Creeper in this movie, he just doesn't feel like he has a worthy opponent, a worthy adversary, unlike the first one, unlike the second one. He just kind of feels like he's floating from scene to scene, that there isn't really a cohesive story that the film is trying to say. It does feel like it's a bit of a pointless movie. I have to give it props over Reborn because I do think the acting is better. To me, and I know a lot of people will disagree with this, but unlike Reborn, 3 in a way still feels like a creeper film, and that might be because of Jonathan Breck, but I also agree he does feel very tired. He feels quite bored. This is not a performance where he's giving his heart and soul like 1 and 2. He kind of feels like he doesn't really want to be there. The creeper does. It's like the creeper himself knows that the characters he's killing aren't even worthy of his time and attention. But there's also something to the cinematography. I think this was shot in, it was either Florida or Louisiana, wherever it was that they filmed the first two, I think. And to me, there is still echoes of 1 and 2. I think you disagree with that, but to me, it still feels that somewhere in there is a creeper film. And that is mainly the reason why this is above 4. But it's not a great movie. I don't return to it often, but there are a few little things in there that remind me that, you know, this is a creeper film.
Yeah, I disagree entirely.
Well, at one point, this was your last.
Yes, at one point I did rate this last, and I rated Reborn above this purely based on, I think if you go back to our review of Reborn, I do say this, purely because it wasn't directed by Victor Salva, but after sitting with it for a while, Reborn has just went straight back down there. There is one scene in this in particular where the creeper retrieves his truck that is filmed incredibly nicely. It's set at night, really nice lighting, and that to me feels the closest to Jeepers Creepers.
Oh, is that when he's on top of the truck?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good scene.
The truck. I will never forgive this movie for what it did to the truck. It looks different. It's got insane weapons that just do not work with how the truck is a truck. What it has shouldn't fit in. It's stupid. The truck is basically sentient as well. And it drops grenades that can track along the floor to its enemies that looked god-awful. But overall, the idea of having a squad of creeper hunters who are like family members of past victims is a great idea. And I think this would have worked really well if they were led by Trish 23 years later.
I agree. So the bounty hunters in principle is a good idea. I think my main issue is we only hear vaguely about what the creeper has done to their friends and families. We don't see it. We're not part of it. So we don't have that emotional attachment. We're only hearing about these cases in passing. So it doesn't hit as hard as 1 and 2.
Considering the events of the first movie and second movie, 23 years later, the police would be very aware of the creeper, especially with Trish rallying people to take him on when he comes back. It could have been a great story, but that is not the story that we got. It's a very forgettable movie set in a time span that doesn't really make any sense, and it is what it is. It was a stopgap to try and drum up hype.
Yeah.
And it failed because the franchise died for several years and Victor Salva ended up having to give up the rights.
Yeah.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
We'd like to shout out our groovy members. We appreciate everything you do for this channel and helping us grow. You guys are awesome.
Okay, so second place. To be honest, guys, these two are very interchangeable for us, and we kind of agonised over this for a little while. But I think in the end we agree, coming in second place, Jeepers Creepers 2. We adore this movie. Absolutely love it. I loved it then. I still love it now. In comparison to the first one, this one it's obviously still a horror movie, but there are a lot more action sequences. It still delivers on the scares. There are some really good sequences within it, but there's just more going on. There's more of a frenetic, kinetic energy. The dynamic between the school kids and the cheerleaders on the bus, it's very different to the dynamic we have with Trish and Derry, who are basically like our sole two characters throughout the first film. So there's more going on. There's more personalities involved. I fucking adore Ray Wise in this film. The opening of Jeepers Creepers 2 with Billy in the cornfield or the wheat field, whatever it is, beautifully shot, greatly acted, absolutely traumatizing. I will never truly get over that opening shot. And something that only dawned on me recently was how the opening of 2 mirrors the ending of 1. You know, we don't really know Billy at this point, but he's a child, so he has our empathy. It's exactly the same with Derry in the first one, that a character that we know, that we love, carted off by the creeper, a loved one just chasing after them, you know, futilely, in shock, in terror, in anger, in despair. It's a nice mirrored sequence to the first film. I love how fear is conveyed in this with the kids on the bus. talked about it in our video again a bit more in depth, but about how even characters that aren't necessarily likable on a surface level, you can't help but empathise with them because of how well they sell the fear, what fear does to disrupt maybe once upon a time close friendships and close dynamics, close relationships with people, that survival instinct, what it'll do. Ray-wise, even trumping the first film, I think is the Creeper's greatest foe. Like, they are stone cold enemies. And Ray Wise does not even have a lot of dialogue in this, but there's so much body language and there's so much anger that he has in his face, and that final showdown between him and the Creeper, it's stellar. All of the character deaths are interesting in their own way. Scotty's death, the main bully in the film, will always stand out to me. It's a great comeuppance for the character. You can't help again but kind of feel sorry for the guy, even though, you know, what he's done to the others, what he's said to the others. It's a bit of an emotional roller coaster. I don't think the film gets enough credit for that. I absolutely love it. The only reason that this is second place really is because we think it is a little bit teeters towards more action than horror. But this is one that I would probably choose to watch a bit more because it is a bit less scary to me, and therefore I find it a little easier to watch. It's fantastic. It's a solid sequel, but it's just a great horror movie.
It does everything a sequel should do, and it ups the ante. We get to see more of the Creeper. Jonathan Breck really gets to put his all into this because we get a lot of face time with the Creeper, and he looks a little bit different from the first one. He's juicier, probably because he's eaten a bit more. But we see a change in his behaviour because this is day 23. Like, this film set is over days 22 and 23?
Day 22, 23.
So the Creeper's coming to the end of his time. So he's more aggressive, whereas he stalks Dari and Trish through the first film. He is on the attack in this film constantly. And I think he's slightly less picky about who he wants in certain scenes. He's way more aggressive. There's some scenes in this which are the nicest looking shots in this entire franchise. His wings have never looked as good as they do in this movie. And also we just get to see a bit more of the questions that we all had from the first ones, like, how does eaten limbs bring damaged body parts back? We kind of see this here, also without really diving into his lore too much. And I loved that Justin Long returned for a brief cameo.
It's a great cameo as well.
So we get the psychic side of it as well, which we still don't know how it works. This is almost like a Final Destination, like a premonition sort of thing.
Yeah, I'll also just add to that as well. I think one thing that this movie also doesn't get a huge ton of props for is it doesn't fall into the stereotypical sequel follow-up of, oh, we have to explain the origins of the Creeper. Oh, you know, we have to explore his backstory. We have to tell the audience exactly where he came from, who he is, what his purpose is. No, we don't get any of that in this film. As you say, we're a little bit more explored, like what happens when he has to take off his entire head. We see him go into hibernation here, which is awesome. I love that. That's not something we see in the first one. But we don't come to learn anything more about him, really. And I really, really like that. The mystery is still there. We just get to see a bit of a different side of the Creeper.
I think that's a strength of the franchise as a whole, that we've never really seen the origins of the Creeper. Even the tie-in comics have hinted that he might have been around for the Aztecs, that maybe he's responsible for Roanoke, but we've never had a concrete origin story. And I really appreciate that, considering how long these films have been around for. And we may never get a true origin story for the Creeper now, because we may never get another Creeper film.
Yeah. This is Jonathan Brecker is at his best, arguably, in the franchise. It's the last good Creeper performance that we've had.
It was like a good Creeper film that we had.
Yes. Also, R.I.P. Nikki Acox, who played Minxie in the movie. She passed away fairly recently.
Yeah,
I think
she was really good in this as well.
Yeah.
So, shockingly, in first place is Jeepers Creepers. The original from 2001. Like we said, this is very interchangeable with Jeepers Creepers 2. I think depending on what day you ask us, it could swap. And I think the main reason we put this first is because it's the original and it is more of a straight-up horror movie. Gina Phillips and Justin Long as Trish and Dari Jenner are incredible in this. You could tell that Justin was going to be a big star.
Yeah.
He shows fear incredibly well. And there's just a mystery to this film. It's quite late in that the supernatural element is revealed. And it's shocking. It's still shocking to this day. The House of Pain segment, that whole scene is amazing. If you watch the Blu-ray, you can actually see a lot more detail on the walls before it's revealed, which is really cool. You can see a lot more of the Creeper's face in a lot more scenes. Also, if you get the Blu-ray, you can actually see the deleted scene where the Creeper speaks, which is weird.
Yeah.
She don't smell too good.
amazing from beginning to end. I love the chase, the slow reveal of things. I think the one thing that's aged not very well is Creeper's wings. Don't look fantastic, but we don't see a ton of them. They knew what they could get away with the budget that they had, and that what it has a lot of is great acting, great atmosphere, and a compelling mystery. And a really depressing ending. And that's, I feel like a lot of horror today needs to have like your jump scare ending where it's like, oh, everything's okay, but is it? This is straight up, our characters are not okay. This is a bleak ending. And I will always give this props for just going for the jugular with that ending.
This is one of the few horror films I've seen that actually makes me cry. Not every time I watch it, but for the most part, this film actually gets me very emotional. That is in large part due to Gina Phillips and Justin Long. I absolutely adore this really simple decision to make them brother and sister. The fact that they are related, they're not a couple. We don't have, like all that traditional relationship drama that you would get with, boyfriend, girlfriend, man and wife. They're brother and sister. There's familiarity there. There's a very, very unique, specific dynamic that they have. They are wonderful actors. It always makes me sad that I have not seen Gina Phillips in many things. In fact, I think this is probably the only thing I've ever seen her in. She's a fantastic actress. And when we get to the ending and that final showdown between the Creeper and Trish and Darry, and who's he gonna pick, and then Trish pouring her heart and soul, begging the Creeper to take her.
I won't fight you. You can take me. I'm stronger. You want me.
Actually kind of making it worse for Darry in a way, because he wants the one that's more scared, not the one that's tough. It's heartbreaking to me when she runs out of that police station calling after her brother, knowing she's lost him forever. It really does get to me. It's a credit to the acting. It's a credit to just how unique a story it is. This movie has me from the very beginning up until the very end. It never ever loses my attention. Dumb decision to go back to the pipe and explore what's down the pipe aside, I don't mind, because it's Justin Long and it's Gina Phillips, and the bad decision is even called out within the film, and it leads to one of the greatest revelations I can remember in a horror movie, The House of Pain, like you said, and that poor bastard that's like still partly alive down there, half of his organs are gone. That will never not shock me. It will never not get to me. I adore it. And it does deserve to be number one in my eyes, because, as we say, second one is great, but this one just delivers on the scares and the that lingering horror just a little bit more than two.
Especially when you take into consideration the actual final scene when we actually do see what happens to Darry at the end. Those peepers. Obviously, the song is very iconic. The song became so popular afterwards that they could never actually afford it again for the sequels.
Yeah.
It's like Terminator as a creature feature with a supernatural twist.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. In a way, the second one is kind of like Jaws, but on a bus. In the sense that, you have this unstoppable force that is just relentlessly pursuing, these people that are trapped in this one area. And I think, in a way, you can also say about the first one, the Creeper hones in on these two people, and he's enjoying the chase. It's personal. And I fucking love that. And unfortunately, that is completely lacking in 3 and 4.
I do not think we will see another Creeper film for a very long time. And ultimately, I think, aside from the film not being very good, talking about Jeepers Creepers Reborn, it didn't do that well. I think it might have made its money back, but I think the knowledge of what Victor Salva did, even though he had nothing to do with that film, it is still lingering. And I think it could be a few decades before they'll even attempt another Jeepers Creepers. And I think maybe that's for the best. Let it just lie for a bit. Let people miss it, because Jeepers Creepers fans, they've been hurt too much. We waited in hope for this reboot as a reward for sticking with the franchise, and we were punished severely for it. So let's let it lie, and let's love the films that we have, as in Jeepers Creepers 1 and Jeepers Creepers 2.
Let's wait another 23 years.
In my mind, the Creeper was defeated at the end of Jeepers Creepers 2.
Yeah, and I'm content with that. We got 2 absolutely solid films. We may get a Jeepers Creepers 5, 6, 7, 8 at some point in the future, but look, we know nothing is going to surpass the first one and the second one. It is actually the 23rd year of the 23rd spring this year, isn't it? May? I'm pretty sure May 2001 the first one came out.
You waiting for something?
About 3 more days. give or take a day or two.
Guys, it's the 23rd spring.
Well, unless I've missed my movie news, I don't think we're going to have a creeper popping up in cinemas this year.
I don't think we are, but, y'all that are down in Florida, watch your backs.
I mean, Reborn was filmed in England, so we've got to watch out for it. So, thanks a lot, guys. We hope you've enjoyed this one. Went into a bit more detail on these films than we thought we would. With Friday the 13th, we very much sped through the descriptions because there were so many films. So this time we didn't have to do two separate rankings because we actually agreed.
We do.
We might not agree on a ranking again for a while.
We might not even agree on our reasonings for the rankings in the case of Jeepers Creepers 3. In this case, but
yes, you actually have more props than that than I do.
But we do agree.
Let us know, can you watch these movies? This is an interesting question. And I know a lot of bigger channels won't talk about these films because of Victor Salva, and that is absolutely fair enough. But have you guys seen these movies? And with that knowledge, how do you feel on watching them? Because I do admit, sometimes when I rewatch the first movie, occasionally I do get a little blip into my mind of Victor Salva did this, and it is a little bit like it's a bad taste when watching it. Purely the power of nostalgia of having not known anything about him when watching the first two films. And nostalgia is a very powerful thing that keeps pulling me back to these films. But they also, especially the first two, are undoubtedly just good films.
Whether, it's morally, or ethically right to go back and enjoy these movies and rewatch these movies, talking about the first three especially, I mean, that's a whole video in and of itself. That's a very in-depth discussion, the likes of which I don't think we will ever really do on this channel.
We are not qualified for that type of discussion.
We are not. But like we said at the beginning, we're not here to talk about the director specifically. We're here to talk about the art, and you can separate those two things. And like David said, a movie is so much more than just one person. It is a bit trickier in Jeepers Creepers because he didn't only direct it, he wrote it. But ultimately a movie it's a team effort. It is the acting, it's the editing, it's the music, it's everything. It's the set design, it's the stunts. And the first two films deliver on so many of those that go beyond Salva. So in with that justification, I know I will carry on watching the first two because I do think they are stellar horrors.
So thanks a lot, guys. And just remember, every 23 years, for 23 days, he gets to eat. Eat what? Eat us.
Eat us.
We'll see you next week.